How could you do this to me? You're a liar, and this baby is not mine.
I froze. My whole body went numb, and the sound of his voice, angry, bitter, and full of venom, rang through my ears like a bomb. The words hit me harder than any slap could. There, in front of his entire family, in our family home, this man, my husband, had just humiliated me. He was the father of my child, or so I thought. But now, as I stood there, 6 months pregnant, my world had come crashing down. His mother sat there, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face expressionless, as though she'd heard it all before. His father, the old man who'd always treated me like his own daughter, had his eyes glued to the floor, pretending this wasn't happening. The rest of the family? They were silent, except for the muffled gasps that followed my husband's outburst. "Don't you dare pretend like I'm the fool here," he spat, turning his gaze back to me. "You think you can hide your lies? That baby's not mine, and I've had enough of your tricks." I blinked, trying to process his words. My heart raced in my chest, hammering as if it was going to explode. My vision blurred, my mind a foggy mess of confusion and pain. What are you saying?" My voice trembled as I spoke, struggling to find clarity in his chaos. "What do you mean it's not yours? Of course, it is." He scoffed, taking a step forward, his anger still evident. "You know damn well it's not mine. You've been sleeping around, and I can't be the only fool here. You've been sneaking behind my back." "Enough!" I interrupted him, my voice breaking as I stepped back. The pain in my chest was unbearable. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had been faithful, had been nothing but a good wife to him. But he wasn't done. "You think I'm stupid, don't you?" he sneered, his lips curling into a disgusted smirk. "I know about the man you've been seeing. I know what you've been up to, and I can't stand it anymore. I'm done." His words echoed in my head, but they didn't make sense. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. How could he say this to me, in front of everyone? Why? My mind raced as I turned toward his mother, desperate for some sort of support, some reassurance. But there was nothing in her eyes but indifference, as if this was just another day in the drama-filled life she had tolerated for years. "Don't you dare look at her for help," he barked as if reading my thoughts. "She raised you to be a liar, didn't she?" I couldn't believe this was happening. How could the man I loved, the father of my child, accuse me of something so vile, so devastatingly false? My body trembled, and my hands clutched my swollen belly for support, as though I could somehow protect my baby from his hatred. His eyes softened for just a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he was reconsidering his words. But then, he turned his back on me, walking toward the door. "You're a disgrace," he muttered, his voice cold, "and I'm done with this family." I stood there, frozen, unable to move as the door slammed behind him. Silence filled the room like a thick fog, choking the life out of everything. I looked at his family, the people who were supposed to support me, but they were all staring at me like I was the villain in this twisted scene. "Get out of my house," his mother finally said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "We don't need your drama here. Just go." It was like a slap to my face. The woman who had always been so sweet, so caring, had just turned her back on me, just like that. And for what? For a man who no longer loved me, for a family that never truly accepted me? Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at the empty seat where my husband had sat just moments ago. How had we come to this? What had happened to the man who promised to love and cherish me? I felt utterly, completely alone. The next few hours were a blur of empty words and angry thoughts. I sat in the corner of the living room, trying to comprehend what had just happened, trying to come to terms with the weight of his betrayal. But nothing made sense. How could he accuse me of cheating? Where was the proof? My thoughts drifted to the day we had met, the warmth of his touch, the way his eyes lit up when he looked at me. Had it all been a lie? Was our entire relationship built on a foundation of lies? And then there was the baby. My baby. Our baby. The innocent life growing inside me, who now faced the harsh reality of its parents' shattered relationship. The next day, after everything had calmed down, I decided to confront him. I needed answers. I needed to understand what had gone wrong, what had led him to make such a devastating accusation. I wasn't ready for what I would uncover. Don't forget to like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, his angry eyes, the coldness in his voice as he accused me of betrayal. My heart ached as I lay in bed, the weight of his words pressing down on me like 1,000 pounds. The next morning, I tried calling him, but my calls went unanswered. His phone kept ringing, but there was no sign of him. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I needed answers. I hadn't told anyone about the fight yet, especially not my family. I didn't want them to know how bad things had gotten, how much he had hurt me, how his accusation had torn apart everything I had believed in. I was alone in this. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went through his things, hoping to find some clue, some indication of what had really been going on. Maybe there was something I had missed. Maybe there was a reason why he had come to such a drastic conclusion about our relationship. My eyes fell on his phone, lying on the desk in the corner of the room. Without a second thought, I picked it up. I knew it wasn't right, but I was desperate for answers. I needed to know the truth. The screen unlocked easily. He hadn't changed his password in years. My fingers shook as I opened his messages. At first, it was just typical stuff, work emails, some texts with his friends. But then, I found what I was looking for. It was a text thread from a woman named Tina. "Baby, I can't wait to see you tonight. We'll make up for all the time we've lost." My heart skipped a beat. I blinked rapidly, as if the words would somehow change. I scrolled down, hoping to find something that would make it all a misunderstanding. But there was nothing. "Are you sure your wife doesn't suspect anything? I don't want to be the cause of your problems." The texts continued for weeks, but my eyes were already numb. My fingers trembled as I read the painful words, the confirmation of his betrayal. He had been seeing her, probably even longer than I had suspected. The man who had sworn to love me, who had promised to be by my side through everything, had been hiding this affair right under my nose. I sat back, the phone slipping from my fingers as I let the reality of the situation sink in. My husband had been living a double life, lying to me every day, while I had been there, faithfully loving him, carrying his child. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, but more than that, I felt humiliated. This woman, Tina, had taken my place. She had been in my husband's life, had received the love and attention that should have been mine. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs? But there was something else, something that didn't sit right. He had accused me of cheating. Yet here I was, the one who had been betrayed. Why had he turned the tables on me? Was he trying to cover up his guilt? Was he trying to deflect the blame? As I sat there, holding his phone, my mind raced. I couldn't just let this go. I needed to confront him, to ask him why. But I couldn't do it alone. I had to tell my best friend, Miriam. She'd always been there for me, through every high and low. I needed her to be the voice of reason, the one to help me see things clearly. So I called her. "Miriam, it's bad. He's been cheating on me." I found the texts. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. "He's been lying to me." And then, he accused me of something I didn't do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she responded. "I'm so sorry, girl. This is a nightmare. But you can't let this slide. You need to take control of this situation. You deserve better." Her words were a lifeline. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our unborn child. I couldn't let my baby grow up in a household full of lies, in a home where love no longer existed. I had to make him face the consequences of his actions. I had to fight for my child, for my dignity, and for the family I thought we had built. I had one mission now, revenge. But it wouldn't come in the form of violence or anger. No, I would do it the smart way. I would gather evidence, build my case, and make sure that when the time came, he would know exactly what he had lost. I couldn't let him destroy me. I had to be strong, for myself, and for the baby. The days after I uncovered the truth felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything was clouded with betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak. But one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going to sit back and let him get away with this. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of this lie. I couldn't let him destroy me without a fight. And that's exactly what it felt like he was trying to do. Destroy me. He had reduced me to nothing more than a victim, a pawn in his cruel game, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I needed to get my life back. And to do that, I needed to make him understand the weight of his actions. I couldn't let him have the satisfaction of walking away without facing the consequences. That afternoon, after I got off the phone with Miriam, I made my decision. I was going to confront him. Properly this time, no more hiding behind accusations or insults. It would be a cold, calculated conversation. The truth was going to come out, and he was going to hear it from me. But I couldn't do it just yet. No, I had to make sure I had all the pieces in place. I needed the evidence. I needed to know everything. It wasn't enough that I knew he had been cheating. I needed him to feel the sting of his betrayal. I needed to make him see just how much damage he had done. I started by going through his phone again. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to. I needed to know how deep this affair had gone. As I scrolled through more of his messages with Tina, I found the ugly truth. He had been seeing her for over a year. The messages weren't just flirty banter. They were full of plans, intimacy, and promises he had broken to me. He had promised me that I was the only one, and now I could see it all laid bare. I felt my stomach churn with disgust. But that was when I saw something else. A name I didn't recognize. Chuka. The name appeared at the top of one of their recent texts. We need to talk. I have to tell her about us. The sooner, the better. My breath caught in my throat. Chuka? Who was this man? I hadn't seen this name before, and it didn't make sense. Why was he talking about telling me about them? What could this mean? I opened the message and scrolled, my hands shaking. She's pregnant, Tina had written. I'm so sorry, but you have to tell her. It's time. My heart dropped. Pregnant? I wasn't just dealing with an affair anymore. I was dealing with a full-blown betrayal. I had thought our baby was the only one on the way, but there was more to this story, much more. I had to find out who Chuka was. I had to know everything. I couldn't confront him yet, not until I had all the facts. I needed more than just this phone evidence. So I made a plan. I had a contact at his office who I could trust. If anyone knew what was really going on in his life outside of our home, it was his colleagues. I had to know if there was more to this than I could see. It took some time, but eventually, I got what I needed. Chuka is a friend from work. My contact told me over the phone, her voice hushed. He's been spending a lot of time with your husband lately, and I've heard rumors. There's talk about a business venture, something under the table. It's not exactly above board. Your husband and Chuka, well, they're more than just business partners. That was it. It wasn't just an affair. This was a web of lies, money, and deceit. This wasn't about love, it was about power. My husband had been hiding this entire life from me. And worse, it seemed like he was trying to drag me into it. He had been playing me, manipulating me. But now I had the power to turn it all around. I had the information. I knew I couldn't confront him immediately. He would lie and cover it up, just like he had with everything else. I needed to be smarter. But there was something else that gnawed at my mind. The thought of Tina and what she had said about the pregnancy. Was she referring to another woman? Or was there something more to the story? I couldn't stop thinking about that name. Chuka. The next day I made the call. I had to know who this man was, and why my husband had been so close to him. I needed to speak with Chuka. He was the missing link in all of this. But I didn't just want to talk to him. I wanted to gather information. I wanted to know how deep my husband's betrayal ran. I was going to play my part in this, make sure I had everything to take him down. I had no intention of letting him get away with it. I would make him regret ever thinking he could destroy me. I would gather my evidence, stand my ground, and when the time was right, I would confront him. But first, I had to learn everything I could about Chuka. I spent the next few days obsessing over Chuka. The name had haunted me, gnawing at the edges of my mind, growing louder with each passing hour. Who was he? Why was he so involved with my husband? And most importantly, why was I only hearing about him now, after everything had fallen apart? I knew I had to speak to him. It wasn't just about uncovering more evidence. It was about taking control of the narrative. My husband had been manipulating me for so long, and now I would do the same. I wasn't going to let this man get away with tearing my life apart without a fight. The next step was to get to Chuka. It wasn't easy, but I had my ways. After all, I'd been married to a man who was deeply involved in the city's business and social circles. I knew the people who knew the people, and that's exactly how I found him. I had my contact track him down, and soon enough, I was sitting in a small, dimly lit cafe just a few blocks from where I lived, waiting for Chuka to arrive. My heart was pounding, but I steadied myself. I had done nothing wrong. I was the one who had been wronged, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. The cafe was empty except for a few scattered patrons, and the soft hum of jazz music in the background did nothing to calm my nerves. I sat at a corner table, tapping my fingers nervously on the surface, my mind racing. I had no idea what to expect, but one thing was clear: this conversation was going to change everything. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Chuka walked in. He was tall, well-dressed, and had an air of confidence about him. I could immediately tell that he was used to being in control. As he walked towards me, I could see the slight hesitation in his step, as if he knew something was off. I didn't give him a chance to speak. As soon as he sat down, I cut straight to the point. "I know about the affair," I said, my voice low but steady. "I know about everything, Tina, the lies, the betrayal. And now I need to know what you're doing in my life. Why are you so involved with my husband? What do you want?" Chuka looked at me, his expression a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe? But he quickly masked it, leaning back in his chair, a cocky smile spreading across his face. "What exactly do you think you know?" he asked, his voice smooth, but there was a nervous edge to it. "I'm just a businessman. I've done nothing wrong." I didn't buy it for a second. His calm demeanor didn't fool me. I had seen men like him before. Slick, confident, but hiding something deeper, something darker. "You're lying," I said, staring him down. "You've been sleeping with my husband. You've been in our home, pretending to be his friend, but all along, you've been nothing more than a snake, slithering behind my back. So, tell me, why? What is this all about? Why drag me into this? Why now?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and for a moment, I thought he was going to back down. But then, he leaned forward, locking eyes with me. "Your husband and I are partners," he said quietly. "But it's more than just business. We've been working on something big. And your husband? He's not the man you think he is. He's not just a cheating husband. He's involved in something much bigger, something that could ruin everything. If you're not careful, you could get caught up in it too." I felt my blood run cold. My husband wasn't just having an affair. He was involved in something illegal, something dangerous. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about something far worse. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What is he involved in? What kind of mess have you both gotten yourselves into?" Chuka hesitated, his gaze flicking around the cafe nervously. He seemed to be debating whether or not to tell me more. But then, with a resigned sigh, he leaned back again. "I can't go into all the details," he said, his voice lowering. "But let's just say your husband is playing a dangerous game. He's been laundering money, and this affair is not just about sex. It's about keeping people distracted while he builds his empire. You've been in the dark, but now it's getting messy. He's going to drag you down with him if you don't wake up and leave." The room seemed to spin as his words hit me. Money laundering? An empire? My husband wasn't just a cheating liar, he was a criminal. A criminal who had been using me as a shield, hiding behind me while he played a dangerous game with people's lives. And now it seemed like I was about to be pulled into it. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. I had been living with this man, loving him, trusting him. And now I was learning that everything had been a lie. My whole life had been a lie. But I wasn't going to let him take me down with him. Chuka's words echoed in my mind, and suddenly, everything clicked. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had power, too. I could use this information, use what I had learned to get what I wanted. I wasn't going to sit back and let him get away with it. "I don't know who you think you're dealing with," I said, my voice steady and cold now. "But I will not be your scapegoat. I will make sure my husband pays for everything he's done. And you're not going to get away with this either." Chuka's confident smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "You're making a big mistake, lady," he warned, his tone turning cold. "But I guess you'll figure that out soon enough." I stood up, my body trembling, but my mind clear. I had what I needed. Now it was time to make my move. "I'll be in touch," I said, turning to leave, "and you'll regret ever crossing me." I walked out of the cafe, my mind in a whirl. Chuka's words had hit me like a freight train, but I wasn't going to let them knock me off course. No, now I had a new purpose. I had the knowledge I needed, and now it was time to make sure my husband paid for everything he had done. I wouldn't be the one to suffer in silence anymore. But as I stepped out into the street, the weight of everything pressed on me again. The baby kicking in my belly was a reminder of what was at stake. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about my shattered trust or my bruised heart. This was about my child, the innocent life growing inside me, who deserved to be brought into a world of truth, not lies. I had to be careful. Chuka had warned me that my husband was involved in something dangerous, something far bigger than a simple affair, and I didn't have all the pieces yet. I couldn't act recklessly. If I was going to get my revenge, I had to be smart about it. I needed to gather more information, create an airtight case, and take him down without him seeing it coming. The first thing I did when I got home was sit down at my desk. I opened my laptop, staring at the screen, trying to figure out where to start. I had the phone messages, the evidence of the affair, but now I needed to understand the bigger picture. Chuka had said my husband was laundering money, that he was building an empire off the backs of others. I had to know exactly how deep he was in. I spent hours combing through everything I could find. I had to understand the scope of his business dealings. What companies was he involved with? Who were his associates? The answers came slowly, but they came. My husband had been working with shady businessmen, people who were known for their illegal activities. He had been hiding behind a facade of legitimate business ventures while secretly running a money laundering operation that spanned across borders. I felt sick as I read through the documents, realizing that the man I had married, the man who had promised to protect me, to love me, was a criminal. He had been hiding this life from me the entire time, and I had been none the wiser. But now it was all clear. The money, the trips, the late nights at work, it had all been lies. I had been nothing more than a pawn in his game. But as I kept digging, I realized something else. There was more to this story than just betrayal and lies. My husband had been involved with powerful people, dangerous people. He had built his empire off their backs, and now they were looking for him. I wasn't just dealing with an affair anymore. I was dealing with a criminal syndicate, a web of deceit that reached further than I could imagine. I had to make sure I was ready. If I was going to take him down, I needed to do it carefully. The more I learned, the more I realized how much danger I was in. But there was no going back now. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. The next step was to gather more evidence. But this time I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. I reached out to Miriam, explaining everything I had discovered. She was shocked at first, but as soon as she understood the full extent of what was going on, she became determined to help me take him down. "I can't believe this," she said over the phone. "You need to go to the authorities. This isn't just a family issue anymore. It's a crime. You need to get the police involved." But I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed more proof. I needed to be sure that I had everything I could before making a move. "I'm not going to the police just yet," I told her. "Not until I have everything I need. I want to make sure that when this hits, it hits hard." Miriam was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "You've got the strength, girl. But you need to be careful. There's no telling how far your husband will go to protect himself." I knew she was right. I had seen how far he was willing to go to keep his secrets. But this time, I wasn't going to let him control the narrative. This time, the truth would come out. In the following days, I continued to gather information, reaching out to more people who might know something, piecing together the fragments of my husband's life. Every new piece of evidence felt like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I could feel the power shifting in my favor. But with each new discovery came a growing sense of unease. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband anymore. I was tangled in a web of corruption and crime, and there was no telling how far the people involved would go to protect themselves. As the days went by, I became more determined. I would expose my husband for the liar he was, and I would make sure that justice was served. I would do whatever it took to make sure that the truth came to light, no matter the cost. But just as I thought I had everything under control, I received a message that made my heart stop. It was from an unknown number, and the message was simple, but chilling. "Stop digging. It's not just your husband you'll hurt. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the message again, my hands shaking. The warning was clear. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband and a criminal. I was dealing with people who were willing to do anything to protect their secrets. The message sat on my phone screen, its words burning into my mind. I read it over and over again, each time feeling more unsettled. "Stop digging. It's not just your husband you'll hurt. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." Who had sent it? Was it Chuka trying to scare me? Or was it someone else? Someone connected to my husband's shady dealings? Either way, the warning was clear. I wasn't just threatening my husband's empire, I was threatening my own safety. But there was no going back now. I had come too far, and I couldn't let fear stop me. I needed to finish what I started, no matter the risks. The truth had to come out, and I wasn't going to be silenced. I spent the next few days on edge, my every move feeling like it was being watched. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that someone knew exactly what I was up to. But I kept going. I had to. I met with Miriam again, this time at a cafe near my apartment. As soon as I sat down, I could see the concern written all over her face. "Have you thought about what I said?" she asked, her voice low. "You can't keep doing this alone. You need help, and you need to be careful. The people your husband is involved with, they're not the kind of people you can just mess with." I didn't tell her about the threatening message I'd received. I didn't want to worry her more than she already was. But deep down, I knew she was right. This was bigger than me, bigger than just a betrayal. "I know," I said, my voice tight, "but I can't just sit back and let him get away with this. He's hurt me, he's hurt our family, and now he's been hiding behind his lies. It's time he faced the consequences." Miriam nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "I get it. But remember, people like him, they don't lose without a fight. Be careful." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of anyone anymore. But the truth was, I was scared. I had been for days, ever since I realized just how far my husband had gone, how deep his criminal activities ran. And now, with the anonymous warning, I knew I had to move quickly. I couldn't let this drag on any longer. I needed to take control. Over the next few days, I put my plan into action. I continued to gather evidence, collecting documents, receipts, and texts that tied my husband to the illegal activities. But I also reached out to someone who could help, someone who had the resources to protect me if things went south. I had a friend who worked in corporate law, a sharp woman who had helped me with some legal matters in the past. I trusted her, and I knew she could help me understand the legal ramifications of everything my husband had been involved in. If I was going to expose him, I needed to make sure I was protected. I met with her one afternoon, handing her the pile of documents I had collected. As she flipped through them, her expression grew darker. "Your husband is in deep," she said, her voice low. "This isn't just a money laundering operation. He's mixed up in something far bigger: drug trafficking, organized crime. You name it. Whoever is involved in this isn't going to let you walk away without consequences." My heart dropped. I had known it was bad, but hearing it from someone who understood the gravity of the situation made it feel real. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal, and now I was in danger too. "But I have to do something," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't just let him get away with this. I need to make sure he pays for what he's done." She looked at me for a long moment, weighing her words carefully. "You need to be prepared. This won't be easy. You're dealing with people who won't hesitate to hurt you if they think you're a threat. But if you want to take him down, I'll help you. We'll make sure everything is done legally, and we'll make sure you're protected. But you need to be careful. This is a dangerous game." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm ready." For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my child, for my future. I would expose my husband, tear down everything he had built, and make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. The next day, I got another message. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. "We know you've been digging. Meet us tonight, or there will be consequences." The message was short, blunt, and chilling. I could feel my pulse quicken, my nerves fraying at the edges. Whoever sent this was serious. But I couldn't back down now. I had come too far. I had to confront this head-on. Tonight would be the night I learned the full extent of my husband's betrayal, the night I took control. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I was ready. I would face them all, the criminals, the lies, the pain, and I would make them regret ever crossing me. The evening air felt thick, heavy with anticipation, as I stood in front of the dimly lit warehouse where I had been instructed to meet them. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and determination swirling within me. This was the moment I had been building towards, the moment when everything would be laid bare. I had received another message just hours ago, confirming the meeting. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a choice. It was a command. "Come alone, or you won't get the answers you're looking for." I stood there for a moment, staring at the warehouse. The cold, metallic exterior of the building loomed over me, silent and imposing, as if it were an old friend who had turned into a foe. My mind raced with every possible scenario. Who would be inside? What did they want from me? And, most importantly, why had they invited me here tonight? I checked my phone again. No more messages. No one had reached out to me, which made me think that they knew I was coming. Whoever they were, they had been watching me, and I had no doubt that tonight would be the turning point. I inhaled sharply, trying to calm my nerves. The baby kicked in my belly, as though reminding me of the stakes. Reminding me that I wasn't just fighting for my own future, but for the little life I was carrying. I had come too far to back down now. I stepped forward, my heels clicking sharply on the concrete as I made my way toward the entrance. The doors were closed, but a flickering light came from beneath them. I pushed against them with a slow, deliberate motion. The door creaked open, and a wave of cold air hit me. I walked inside, the echo of my steps bouncing off the high ceilings. The space was vast, empty except for a few scattered crates and large shadows. And then I saw them. Two men standing near the back, silhouetted against the faint light that spilled from an overhead bulb. Their faces were obscured, but their presence was undeniable. The taller of the two stepped forward first. "You came," he said, his voice deep and smooth, but laced with something that sent a chill through me. "I'm surprised. You're braver than I thought." I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't afford to show fear. "I'm here to get answers," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. The man chuckled softly, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Answers? You've been digging into places you shouldn't be. Now you've found us. But the question is, what will you do with what you learn?" I clenched my fists, my resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure my husband pays for what he's done. I'm done being his victim." The other man, who had remained silent, stepped forward. He was shorter, more stocky, but his eyes were hard, calculating. "You think you've got control over this situation, don't you? But you don't. You're just a pawn in a much larger game. This isn't about your husband anymore. It's about protecting the empire he's built." "Empire?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and anger. "What empire? What exactly is he involved in?" The taller man laughed again, a dry, hollow sound. "Your husband was always good at playing the innocent man, wasn't he? But you were never supposed to find out. All this time you've been living in his web of lies, thinking you knew everything. You don't know a thing about who he really is or what he's done." My breath caught in my throat as the full weight of his words sank in. I wasn't just fighting a cheating husband. I was fighting a criminal empire, a network of people involved in all kinds of illegal activities. But it didn't matter. I had come this far. I wasn't going to stop now. "So what? You think I'm just going to walk away?" I demanded, taking a step closer. "You think I'm going to let him and all of you get away with everything? You're wrong." For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was suffocating, and then the taller man nodded toward the door. "You can walk away, but you're not leaving with anything. You'll never get your revenge. All you'll get is a warning. Leave him alone, and maybe we'll let you live in peace. Keep digging, and you'll find yourself in a hole you'll never crawl out of." I stood there, frozen for a moment, my mind racing. They were trying to intimidate me, trying to scare me into backing down. But the more they talked, the more certain I became. I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything I had uncovered. "I'll never walk away from this," I said, my voice steady and resolute. "Not until he pays for what he's done. And I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. You think you can intimidate me? You think you can scare me into silence? You don't know me." The two men exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. The taller man stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "You're playing a dangerous game, but it's not too late to back out. Leave him alone and we'll let you live. You don't want to end up like the others." I didn't flinch. "You've underestimated me from the start. I'll make sure the world knows what kind of man your boss really is." I turned on my heel, my decision made. There was no more room for fear. I was in this now, deeper than I had ever expected, but I couldn't turn back. As I walked out of the warehouse, I could feel their eyes on me. I wasn't just walking away from a confrontation. I was walking towards something much bigger. The truth was going to come out no matter the cost. I could already feel the heat of the coming storm, but this time, I wouldn't be the one to be swept away. The following days passed in a blur of adrenaline, fear, and uncertainty. I couldn't shake the image of the two men from the warehouse, their cold eyes following me as I walked away. The message they had left behind: Leave my husband alone or suffer the consequences, haunted me every waking moment. They had made it clear that they were watching, that they had the power to destroy me if I pushed too hard. But I couldn't stop now. I had come too far. My baby's future, my future, was at stake. I would expose my husband, expose the web of lies, betrayal, and corruption he had entangled himself in, no matter the cost. I sat at my desk, staring at the piles of evidence I had gathered. The text messages, the business documents, the phone records, they all pointed to one undeniable truth. My husband was not just a cheater. He was a criminal, and I had the proof to take him down. But as I looked over everything one last time, doubt crept into my mind. Would I really be able to follow through? Would I be able to expose him and his criminal network without putting myself or my baby at risk? I couldn't afford to waste time thinking about what-ifs. I had to act. I contacted my lawyer friend again, this time with more urgency in my voice. I need you to help me make a case. I can't do this alone anymore. It's not just about the affair. There's a whole criminal operation here. I need to bring him down, but I don't know how to do it without putting myself in danger. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the concern in her tone. You're right. This is bigger than what we initially thought. But I'll help you, I promise. We'll make sure you're safe, and we'll build a case strong enough to take him down. She assured me that she had connections with law enforcement that could help protect me. But I knew there was a risk. My husband wasn't the only one who had secrets. The people he was involved with weren't going to sit by quietly and let their empire crumble. The next few days were a whirlwind. My lawyer friend helped me organize everything I had collected, and we began drafting the legal paperwork. We worked late into the night, meticulously piecing together the case against my husband. Every phone call, every meeting, every lie he had told. Everything was starting to come together. But just as I thought I had everything under control, I got another message. Your husband's not the only one you need to worry about. We know what you're doing, and we won't stop until you regret it. The message was short, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just my husband's betrayal that was threatening my safety. It was the people he was involved with, the dangerous network of criminals who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. I felt the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. I had been playing a dangerous game, but now I was standing at the edge of a precipice. I couldn't turn back now. I had to see this through to the end, for my baby, for myself. That night, after hours of drafting legal documents and reviewing the evidence, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at myself. I looked different somehow, stronger, more determined, but I could still feel the fear gnawing at me, lurking just beneath the surface. The next morning, I made my move. I met with my lawyer friend one last time before heading to the police station. It was time to take my husband down, to expose everything he had been hiding. The authorities would help me gather the evidence and arrest him, and this time, there would be no escape. As we walked into the station, I felt the weight of my decision settle in. The police officers who would handle the case were all business, but I could tell they were intrigued by the evidence I had brought them. The man behind the desk glanced over the documents and then looked up at me with a look that sent a chill down my spine. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "This isn't something you can walk away from once it's started." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm sure. I need to make him pay for what he's done." The officers exchanged glances before nodding. "All right, let's get to work." I sat in the waiting room, feeling as though the weight of the world was on my shoulders. The room was eerily quiet, and the hum of the fluorescent lights above only added to the tension. My hands were trembling as I clutched my phone, waiting for the news to come. And then, after what felt like hours, I got a call from my lawyer friend. "It's done," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They've got him. Your husband is being arrested." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I had been holding. The relief was almost overwhelming, but it was short-lived. There was still a long road ahead. The case wasn't over yet, and I knew there would be more battles to fight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of my life. I had made the decision to stand up for myself, for my child, and now I was seeing the fruits of that decision. I couldn't help but think back to that night in the warehouse, when I had walked out of there with nothing but a promise to fight back. I had been scared then, but now, as I walked out of the police station, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me. I had won. But this was just the beginning. The arrest of my husband should have felt like a victory. It should have been the end of this nightmare, the moment when everything finally fell into place. But instead, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. I had watched him being taken away in handcuffs, his face pale and expressionless. But even as he disappeared into the back of the police car, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. I spent the following weeks dealing with the fallout. News of his arrest had spread quickly. The media were buzzing with speculation about the charges, about the criminal activities I had uncovered. There was no hiding from the truth anymore. My husband's empire was falling apart, and there was no one left to protect him. Not even me. But the hardest part wasn't dealing with the media or the public opinion. It was seeing him for the first time after his arrest. The trial was set to begin soon, and I had made the decision to testify. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I wasn't going to stand by and let him lie his way out of this. I had to make sure the truth came out, no matter the cost. I showed up at the courthouse early, my heart pounding in my chest. I had never been involved in anything like this before, and the sight of the reporters, the lawyers, and the curious onlookers made everything feel more real. I was about to face the man who had torn my world apart, the man I had once called my husband, the man who had betrayed me, lied to me, and tried to destroy everything I had worked for. I walked through the courthouse doors, my eyes scanning the room. I saw my lawyer standing near the front, waiting for me, and I gave her a small nod. As I moved toward her, I caught sight of my husband, sitting in the defendant's chair, handcuffed, his head lowered, but his eyes still cold, still calculating. He saw me, and for the briefest moment, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew what was coming. He stood up, his voice low but clear. "You think this is going to help you?" he called out, his words cutting through the quiet murmur of the courtroom. "You think you're going to get revenge by doing this? You're going to ruin everything. And for what? A lie?" I felt my blood boil. I had known this moment would come, but hearing him say it, hearing him try to turn everything around on me, was like a slap in the face. "No," I said, my voice loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice. You don't get to destroy my life and walk away. You don't get to tear apart our family and expect me to stay silent. I'm here to make sure you face the consequences of what you've done." His face twisted with anger, but he didn't say anything more. Instead, he sat back down, as if the fight had gone out of him. The courtroom fell silent, the tension in the air palpable. I could feel every eye on me, and for a moment, I almost regretted being here. This wasn't easy. The shame, the humiliation, the anger, it all swirled inside me. But I knew this was the only way to take back control. I wasn't going to let him keep his hold over me. I walked up to the witness stand, my hands shaking slightly, but my resolve firm. The prosecutor stood next to me, asking questions, guiding me through the details of what had happened. But it wasn't the facts that held the room's attention. It was the emotion, the pain in my voice as I spoke. "I never wanted any of this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I loved him. I trusted him. I believed in the man I married. But when I found out what he had done, when I found out about the affair, the lies, the money laundering, the criminal network, I knew I couldn't stay silent." The room was quiet as I continued, each word a punch, each revelation a blow. "I'm not just here to tell my story. I'm here to make sure no one else has to go through what I did. I'm here to make sure he can't hurt anyone else." As I finished my statement, I looked over at my husband. His face was red with anger, but he didn't speak. I had exposed him, and he knew it. I had won. The next few hours passed in a blur. The lawyers made their arguments, the evidence was presented, and my husband's defense crumbled. I knew it was only a matter of time before the verdict was handed down. And when it finally came, it was everything I had hoped for. Guilty. The word rang out in the courtroom like a bell, and I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. My husband was going to pay for what he had done. The lies, the manipulation, the cheating, the criminal activities, it was all coming to an end. But even as I felt the relief flood through me, I knew the fight wasn't truly over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter. I still had a long road ahead, but now, I had something I hadn't had before: peace. As I left the courtroom, my lawyer beside me, I felt a sense of closure. I had done it. I had faced my demons and come out victorious. But more than that, I had proven to myself that I was stronger than I had ever realized. My future was no longer defined by the man I had loved. It was mine to shape. The days following the trial were a whirlwind. The media coverage was relentless. Headlines screamed about the shocking fall of a once-respected businessman. My husband's criminal empire had crumbled, and with it, the carefully constructed life we had built together. It felt surreal to see him behind bars, knowing that it was all coming to an end. But despite the victory, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions. Relief, yes, but also emptiness. The man I had loved, my husband, the father of my child, was gone, not just from my life, but from everything I thought we had built. And the pain of that realization didn't go away overnight. I hadn't spoken to anyone in his family since the trial. They had all distanced themselves, some pretending they hadn't known about his activities, others justifying his actions. But the truth was clear. They had all turned a blind eye just like I had. It had taken this entire ordeal for me to see just how deep the lies ran. Yet, despite the anger and betrayal that still simmered within me, I couldn't let myself dwell on it. The hardest part was over. I had taken the first step toward freeing myself, and now it was time to move on. I spent a lot of time reflecting, thinking about what I wanted my future to look like. For so long, I had been defined by my marriage, by the role I had played as a wife and mother. But that wasn't who I was anymore. I had to redefine myself, for my sake and for my babies. One afternoon, I was sitting in my living room, going through some old family photos, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Miriam. I heard the verdict. "I'm so proud of you. You've taken back your life. I think it's time for you to start thinking about your next chapter. There's so much waiting for you." I smiled at her words, feeling the weight of her support lift me up. She was right. There was so much more ahead of me. The past couldn't hold me hostage any longer. I decided it was time to move forward, but not just in a physical sense. I needed to heal emotionally, and I knew that meant accepting the past, letting go of the bitterness, and forgiving myself for the choices I had made. I couldn't blame myself for what had happened. I hadn't known. I hadn't seen the signs. But now I was in control. It wasn't easy, but I started rebuilding. I enrolled in a parenting course, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I found a support group for women who had experienced similar betrayals and connected with other survivors of emotional manipulation and domestic struggles. Talking with others who understood what I had gone through was cathartic. One evening, as I stood in front of a mirror, placing my hand on my growing belly, I smiled. "You're going to be okay," I whispered to the baby. "We're going to be okay." And we were. My future was no longer clouded by anger or fear. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was mine to travel. Every step I took was a step away from the past, and every day was a new opportunity to build a life that was full of strength, love, and hope. Months later, the day finally came. I held my child in my arms for the first time. A new life, a new beginning. The pain of the past still lingered, but it no longer had a hold on me. I had made it through the storm, And now, the sun was shining brighter than it ever had before. The court had given me justice, but it was my journey, my resilience that had given me freedom. I wasn't just a survivor of betrayal and lies. I was a warrior, a mother, a woman who had taken control of her life and her future. And as I looked down at my child, I knew I had done the right thing. This was my redemption. This was my new beginning.